Well, that was close, but hey, a win is a win. A lot to unpack from last week, but at least we were entertained.
Yes, that's the line from the movie Gladiator. Were you not entertained?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of a four-letter word when I think of that victory. Another four-letter word we're going to talk about right now, and that's Pitt on the blue-white tailgate.
And we welcome everyone to the Blue White Tailgate. Steve, Jay, Todd, great to have you with us. Well, that was something. I mean, every game takes on its own personality. That was Sybil.
You get your victory, you get your scare, and you get a heck of a lot to talk about for sure. A lot of storylines develop from that one.
No question. I think, as a former coach, you look at it and you say the things that would concern you are, this was not a sloppy game.
No.
And that's good, but the point is, you didn't make turnovers, you didn't make mistakes, and you could not pull away from App State. In fact, fortunate really to win the game. So obviously there's got to be some things that improve this week.
Now we'll talk about the offense, defense. We'll preview Pitt later. Paul Alexander also joins us from Pittsburgh on the show. For James Franklin, he evaluated the opener this way.
All wins are going to be different. All wins aren't created equally. Most importantly, we found a way to get a win. Get a tough win against a tough opponent. Who, if you look in their history, Michigan, Tennessee took Tennessee to overtime. I think when they were ranked number 9 last year, they took Wake Forest. Wake Forest, I think, had to block a field goal at the end of the game to beat them. I mean, they seem to do this against everybody. So, I'm proud of our guys. We found a way to get a win. We're gonna enjoy it.
In fact, you do get a lot of valuable video out of this, Jay. I mean, it's something that's tangible.
Well, the good thing about it is that your team is tested. They've had to have their backs against the wall, and in reality had to come from behind to win this game. So what kind of character you have. But, you kind of knew that with McSorley going into this game.
Steve, I'm not so sure we could get Jay out of the film room if he really breaks down everything that needs to be broken down from that particular game. Look, it was an uneven performance. It was certainly entertaining, as we discussed. But if you look at it, he didn't really have a position group that you would say, hey, that position group was fantastic. You had individuals play well and individuals not so well. The tackling was an issue, obviously. We can talk about those types of things. And Coach Franklin said we played like an inexperienced team. That's because they are an inexperienced team, especially on defense.
Well, let's go to the update desk brought to you by PSECU. Josh Sperber, what do you have, Josh?
Welcome back to the update desk, sponsored by PSECU. This week, we're on milestone watch as Trace McSorley is just 48 yards away from becoming the second quarterback in Penn State history to rush for over 1,000 yards. If he has the same usage rate that he had against Appalachian State, he should be able to break the record this Saturday against Pitt. Against the Mountaineers, McSorley averaged 4.4 yards a carry on 12 rushing attempts for 53 yards and scored twice. Those 2 touchdowns are all he needs to tie Darryl Clark for the most rush TDs by a Penn State quarterback over their career. He's currently sitting second on that list with 20, tied with Michael Robinson, who leads all Penn State quarterbacks with over 1,600 rush yards. A big game off the ground could be exactly what Penn State needs to improve to 2-0 on the season. If you are planning on attending the game, it is recommended that fans do not show up until after 5 p.m., as there will be no tailgating permitted between 1:30 and 5 during the Pirates game. There is public transportation available on the T-line, and the Roberto Clemente Bridge will be open 30 to 40 minutes following the final pitch. For more information, check out the Heinz Field and Pitt football websites. Guys, back to you.
Yep, that just sucks the life out of it. No question about that. All right, this is going to be the 99th game between the two. Let's take a look at the series history between Penn State and Pitt, as you can see. And from about 73 through 84, probably one of the best rivalries in football.
Well, think about this. From 76 through 86, these two teams combined for 3 national championships.
Yep.
Penn State played for another one. Pitt was ranked #1 during the series when they played. Penn State was ranked #1 during the series when they played. And this really was as big as any rivalry that there was at that time.
Very, very special. And one of the guys involved during those years, Todd Blackledge, is on the call for the game. And he's mentioned how special it was, that rivalry, and he's honored to be part of it. I just want to add before the park, what if the game goes extra innings, the Pirates game? You can forget about the Roberto Clemente Bridge, right?
Yeah, forget about that. I actually, Penn State played Minnesota Metrodome.
Yeah.
Okay. Twins were playing the Indians. It was October 1st.
I remember it well.
Right. They had a cutoff time at 2 o'clock in the baseball game. It went 12 innings. They had to cut it at 2 o'clock. I was in the ballpark. The fans were off the rails.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, been there. Pat Narduzzi, hey, big game for him, big game for Pitt, big rivalry game.
You know, it's an in-state rivalry game. I mean, it's important in the states. You know, in the state of Pennsylvania, and you know, we've said this all the time on in these rivalry games. You know, you either walk the streets or you're going to walk the alleys after the game. You know, you're going to sneak out of Heinz Field and walk down where there's nobody. You don't have to see anybody, or you're going to walk out with your chest up and your chin up, and walk right down the middle of everybody and say, "Hey, here we are. Let's go." So to me, that's what it means a lot.
That's a great line. It really is a great line. But again, the environment in 16, the first quarter, Penn State struggled with the environment.
No question. In fact, I remember all going up into that game that week, people saying it's not a rival, it's not a big deal. And I said, I'm telling you, when you walk in that stadium, it's a big deal. I don't care what you say. And Penn State's going to be ready to go week 1 because don't underestimate how important hate is as a motivating factor in a game like this.
All right, we'll look at the offense after this. All right, so let's get to the offense now. I think uneven at times. I mean, they still had over 400 yards. They still scored 45 points, Todd, but there was also a couple 3-and-outs.
A little reminiscent of 2016, the slow start, right? In the first half, they became a second-half team. Look, they scored 5 touchdowns in 7 possessions after the break. So they were in sync. They scored on the first drive. Of course, penalty helped them on that. The taunting penalty kept that drive alive. So, yeah, uneven, I think, is the word to use for it. But look, they did their job. They put a lot of points on the board, and the offense, it took a little while maybe to find their rhythm, but they found it in the second half.
Well, I think Appalachian State did a nice job in the secondary. When you look at a number of times McSorley was scrambling, looking downfield, they got pressure on him very effectively, but when he scrambled, there was nobody open. Not a lot of separation downfield, and that's going to be a problem down the road. But at the end of the day, at the end of the game, they win the game, score 45 points, and you got to be happy with that.
All right, so let's get to the drive of the game and take a look at how the Nittany Lions were able to finally win this game in overtime. Everything on the ground during the drive of the game, starting with Miles Sanders. Oh, what the heck, let's go with Miles Sanders again. And this is that really kind of set the tone, I thought, that running play right there. And then, what the heck, keep it on the ground with Miles Sanders again. Todd, where do you think they should go this time?
I would say 2-4 to the end zone. Yeah, there you go.
4 Miles Sanders runs.
Well, Jay, and you mentioned how gassed both defenses were, and I think they could sense this. And, the offensive line was really taking over the line of scrimmage at that point.
Yeah, I think on both sides of the ball, that you could see that the run game was getting more and more effective. And, it's been a very, very warm game for opening game, and,
It's been a warm week, man.
I know.
It's been warm all week. All right, so now let's get to the Blaze Alexander Offensive Player of the Week. And the Blaze Alexander Offensive Player of the Week, brought to you by the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, is KJ Hamler. All right, there you go. Redshirt freshman, that's his coming out party right there in football. How about that? And no, go.
Yeah.
That's about how it went at kickoff return. And that was a 52-yard kickoff return that allowed them to set up his tying touchdown. So, I mean, that was big for him. I mean,
well, if he doesn't make the guy miss on the kickoff return, they got the ball at the 8. Game's probably over.
Yeah, there's no question.
That's a lot different going 48 yards than 92.
Yeah, what are they talking about with KJ? The only thing that moves quicker than him out there is his mouth. He's just an exciting guy, and they want him to play with energy, and that's what he brought. And I have to give credit to the production manager for the show, Adam. he said KJ was frustrated. He was twitchy. He wanted to return a kick.
Yeah.
And I think he just couldn't take it anymore. Had to return one. So.
Well, it certainly helps, though, Todd, when you have a guy at the controls when you're behind that has to make plays in Trace McSorley.
Well, if anybody was panicking in Beaver Stadium when they were down 7, they just haven't been paying attention, right? I mean, Trace McSorley is your quarterback. He's done this time and time again. And in those situations, it's really kind of a boring approach, but he just remembers one word, and that's what he tells the guys. One thing to think about.
Just execute. That's all we need to do every single play. Is just, Coach Ronnie talks about all the time, don't make a play, make the play. And it's just talking about make the play that's presented to you. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. We weren't shooting shots down the field and trying to get chunk plays, and they were giving us some things in the flat, and we were able to take 9, 10 yards by doing that. And I think that's a perfect example of making the play, and it ends up working out for us.
He improves to 23-5 as the starter for the Nittany Lions, undefeated at Beaver Stadium. McSorley uses his legs to score twice for Penn State, but a pair of throws to KJ Hamler in the fourth quarter stand out, especially the touchdown toss with 2 guys barreling down on him. That score forces overtime. Trace exudes confidence that rubs off on his teammates.
We had confidence the whole game. I mean, we never lose confidence, and that's the main thing. And we didn't get nervous. We didn't start yelling, or we just said we got to go down and score, and that's what we had to do.
It was exciting. I knew that we all had to step up at this moment. I see 2 minutes on the clock. I look at Trace, I look at DeAndre, I look at Juwan. They all look at me. We shake our head at each other. We know what to do.
Trace is just, amazing at what he does. He's the best quarterback in the country. I mean, he stays composed. I don't think there was any doubt in his mind that they were going to go down and score. And he was, made the right reads, made the right passes, threw the ball right where it needed to be. The offensive line did a great job blocking and creating the holes for Miles to run there. And so, I just knew they were going to go down and score.
5, and this is his 3rd year as a starter, and you can interchangeable parts as to who's catching the ball at the end, right? And I asked him in a media day about developing chemistry, and there's new guys in the huddle.
Yeah.
And it took 1 game for that to happen, and he said, I'm just going to go to who's open. And that's what he does. I mean, Juwan Johnson against Iowa, Brandon Polk on 4th down, KJ Hamler for the touchdown. Just over and over again, we see these examples of him delivering in the clutch.
They're running a 2-minute drill in preseason, and they had a 3rd and 12. It was 1s against 1s. And Trace then took off on a 37-yard run, and one of the guys looked over at me and says, "We've got 9." I mean, seriously. I mean, that's that's the kind of confidence they have. Look, Pat Narduzzi has, between Michigan State, Pitt, he's defended a lot of really good offenses, and he's done a great job over the years. I mean, the guy really knows his defense. So, what does he think of the Penn State offense his team needs to defend?
Personnel-wise, Trace McSorley's different than Testaverde. So, I mean, you got a Heisman Trophy candidate coming in here, maybe the front runner for it. Because he can throw it, he can run it, he can make plays. He's an emotional leader. He's the leader. You got a lot of weapons, whether it's Juwan Johnson out there, who's looks like he's 6'9", and then KJ Hamler, who we recruited out of high school. I know how explosive that guy is in the slot at jersey number 1. I mean, they got players everywhere. You got Miles Sanders in the backfield.
Yeah, Juwan Johnson, though, has to be a guy that steps up as the number 1 receiver, though, Jay.
Well, I think there's no question about it. I thought, I expected, with his size and stuff, a couple of routes, some of the things that McSorley threw out of bounds. Juwan was too close to the sideline, didn't give McSorley anywhere to throw the ball. But I think he will. And don't forget, those were 2 very accomplished corners that Appalachian State had last week. If there was one strength of their defense, it's probably those guys.
You don't see many drops out of Juwan Johnson either.
No.
I think that's going to be erased in the days ahead.
And then there's Miles Sanders, 3rd career start coming up. People forget he started the Rutgers game last year when Saquon got knocked out of bounds on the kickoff, so he had to start. But at 91 yards, played well.
He looked sharp, and he was still strong at the end of the game, so the rotation helped. I also thought one of the best things that happened to Miles Sanders was Ricky Slade's 27-yard touchdown run, because as soon as Miles Sanders came back in, he started to run a little bit more north-south, which was something they addressed at halftime.
Well, we're going to talk about the defense coming up. Can't really say a tale of 2 halves. For the first 3 quarters, pretty good, in control. 4th quarter, no control. We'll talk about that under control after this. So let's outline this simply for you. In the first 3 quarters, the Penn State defense gave up 3 points. There was a kickoff return. Right? In the fourth quarter, they gave up 25 more than that. So
it was entertaining.
Were you not entertained?
That's right.
All right. Now let's take a look at the numbers graphically. Todd, what do you think when you look at that?
Is that the same game? Is what I think. It's funny because sometimes you see, whether it's play calling or what's going on, a lack of aggressiveness, maybe let your foot off the gas offensively. I almost felt like that's what happened defensively, and they started to react a little bit more. Maybe emotion, maybe that inexperience took over.
Got up 2 scores.
Yeah, got up a couple of scores. We pay App State to come here, and this is where we could take control of the game, and this is supposed to be the narrative. And App State didn't get that memo. And boy, they were sharp. But I think also Penn State just was not aggressive. And Coach Franklin mentioned that they didn't play as fast and as aggressive as he wants to see out of them.
Well, our Blaze Alexander Defensive Player of the Week, brought to you by our good friends at Blaze Alexander. And that would happen to be Amani Oruwariye. Forced fumble in the game. And eventually, Jay, we're going to see the interception. And actually, the throw Thomas makes on the interception actually is a really good throw.
Yep.
That's a really good throw.
By all rights, the wide receiver should get the ball, but it's just a great play on defense.
I mean, look at the end zone shot of this. I mean, it's his 6th career interception, and they need him to step up against the Pitt wideouts again this week, along with Castro Fields and so forth. But I give Thomas credit; he made some good throws, Tom.
No doubt, and he made the secondary look poor in the fourth quarter. Yeah. And the secondary, I don't know if there's some miscommunication, but they were letting the wide receivers release down the sidelines, and the safeties weren't getting there in time. Whether Thomas was throwing it a little bit, that one touchdown throw to the left side was a gorgeous throw. But, there was definitely some communication issues. They got to straighten up some stuff in the secondary with Pickett, especially, who's going to maneuver and buy some extra time. And sometimes that's a recipe for disaster for a young, inexperienced secondary.
Where have I heard this before, Jay? Team makes its greatest improvement from game 1 to game 2. So, Josh Sperber, tell us about improving from game 1 to game 2.
Thanks, guys. We've talked about the battle that Penn State endured to pull off their season-opening victory against the Appalachian State Mountaineers. One reason that the score was so close is because of the Penn State struggles on defense. You saw a lot of difficulty with the Nittany Lions in open field tackling, as App State was able to use their speed to evade the Penn State defenders and get into the second level. The secondary for Penn State as well had some troubles, as they only defended 3 passes on the day. One of them was the game-winning interception by Amani Oruwariye in overtime. Lamont Wade had some things to say about what Penn State was doing to improve on the 50-50 balls and tackling this week.
The secondary, that's something we worked on a lot, something that we talked about that we have to get corrected. And in practice, I'm pretty sure we may be tackling a little bit more or ball drills a little bit more, but it's just those things that happen in a game sometimes. We just can't let it happen too much, and we just got to limit it. So.
It's definitely something Penn State has been working on in practice, and we'll see it in play against Pittsburgh this Saturday. Guys, back to you.
Well, it's interesting that they played Appalachian State. Now, defensively, Appalachian State's a 3-4. All right, so that's a different look, especially for your first game. Now, Pitt's a 4-3. Now they're going to have to make the switch, as James Franklin says, defensively, because now you're facing more of a pro-style attack.
So when we made the change and went to the spread-style offense, you've got to be really disciplined now that your defense gets enough work during spring ball, during training camp, and throughout the entire year, that you're getting enough 12 personnel and 21 personnel work. Because if you think you're going to be able to go from only seeing spread and prepare for a pro-style offense that's going to line up and pound you in a week's period of time, that's challenging.
He talked about lining up and pounding you. Jay, part of that is the defense and the linebackers lining up in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that Pitt presents to you with the multiple formations and the motions and the shifts, and we'll talk about this in a little bit in the film room, is getting lined up, because you've got a blitz called, your strength is to your right, all of a sudden they shift 2 tight ends over to the left. Now, what does that do? You got to adjust linemen, you got less linebackers, all of a sudden that gap changes. So that's going to be number one. They've got to get lined up with this young group. They're going to have to, it's going to be a challenge.
And sticking with their assignments once the play gets underway. You know, we saw the jet sweeps a couple of years ago just crush Penn State on defense, and last week there was a misdirection play that Appalachian State ran, and it completely fooled Penn State, where, I mean, the guy wasn't even touched for 8 to 10 yards, where no one was protecting the edge, setting the edge on the way back. So, look, you know, this is just like for App State. This game is the biggest game for Pitt. I mean, they're going to pull out everything they can, all the stops for the Panthers, and they need to expect just about everything.
And then there's Kevin Givens. I mean, just getting another defensive tackle back that knows how to play helps, but it also helps in that 4 defensive end package, because Daniel Joseph had to play out of position to play that spot last week, and he's not big enough.
Yeah, they need to blow up the line of scrimmage and get to the backfield. That'll really cause some trouble for Pitt if they can do that.
Well, Jay talked about lining up properly. Well, that means we're going to go into the film room. He's going to show you exactly why it's important and how they need to do it as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this.
Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate, and welcome in to the film room with Jay Paterno. It's brought to you by Beer Bellies Beverage. Jay, I'm going to get right to it, because we don't have enough time to talk about everything that we could discuss with this matchup. It's really a fascinating one. You want to start with Pitt's defense against Penn State's offense. So why so?
Well, Pat Narduzzi is a defense-first coach, and he builds the entire his entire program about being able to stop people, being able to keep it from scoring. And you go back to when he was at Michigan State, he came in with a system that was very unique and very different. And if you look around college football, you're starting to see Ohio State's using some of those aspects, Auburn's using some of those aspects. So let's talk about some of those things we want to talk about. And as we look at, let's just talk about their base lineup as you look at this screen. You're going to see a lot of pressure on the outside with the corners. And again, that was a bit of a problem for Penn State last week, so expect that to continue. But what they want to do is, you look at this box, they want to play the game in here. They want to take these guys out of it, and it shortens the game, and it puts a lot of pressure on these 3 guys and these 3 guys in the pass game. Last week, Penn State's tight ends needed to be more of a factor. They're going to have to be this week, because this is where it happens. Hamler playing the way he did is going to put pressure on the safety. And if you look at last week against Albany, they were able to get on that guy and make a couple of plays. So let's take a look at how it's played. These guys are all going to be involved in the run game. But when you look at it, it's going to force you to start throwing some things outside. And if you don't throw those things outside to your slot guys, you're going to have a long day. Now, one of the things Penn State did last week, or last year against Pitt, as you look at this, is they got in the trips. And they have a tight end here, a wide receiver here. And what that does is, they like to see in a balanced set. But the minute you get in the trips, they now have to make a decision. Is the safety going to be more tied into the tight end or the wide receiver? And it's a linebacker out here, number 23, who's a great player for Pitt. So who's going to cover whom? And if they go with the tight end last year with a guy like Gesicki, you really had to pay a lot of attention to him. Will they play it the same way? I don't know. But you do get matchups on this linebacker. So take a look at how Penn State was able to take care of that last year. And as you look at it, they run a nice wheel route. They've got a linebacker covering a receiver, and that's a matchup you should win all the time. So look for wheel routes on Saturday. Now, last year, Pitt did not get to the quarterback a lot, only 23 sacks, which is a low number. So one of the things they did, they started to rely on a lot of blitzes. And when they blitz, one of the things that's unusual is they play 3 deep, 2 underneath, which can screw up your crossing routes. So take a look at last year, how effective it was. They were able to get in there, get pressure, and force McSorley to get rid of the ball. Now, if you get those quick outs on those things underneath, that will help you. Again, with those blitzes, one of the things that happened last year is they did a nice job scheming Penn State's protection. They got themselves up here where now your guard and your tackle are worried about these 2 guys. These 2 guys inside become the responsibility of the back and the center, which makes them switch if these guys cross, and that's tough to do. And they drop out here. This guy drops out, so you have a guard blocking nobody. Take a look at how they got home with this last year against Penn State, where suddenly they got a guy running up the middle free, and you see McSorley has to scramble and make it, and take a look at it from the end zone. Again, same thing. One of the few times Barkley didn't block somebody, but hopefully that won't be the case on Saturday.
Yeah, tough to hit your assignment when there's nobody there to go ahead and hit. And you know, right. Mike Gesicki's not there to line up on the outside, but maybe Tommy Stevens is. Not a lot of talk about him.
Could
so
be.
He's one of the guys that could be a factor if he's out there and healthy and ready to play. Switch the fields.
Right.
Penn State's defense struggled a little bit. You got a mobile quarterback. talk about how that matchup plays out.
We talked about this last segment briefly. Lineup. Linebackers and safeties, getting people lined up will be key. And again, they like to create situations where you've got lineup issues. Here you see Pitt puts 3 receivers in the field, which now makes Penn State make a decision. Are we going to put 3 secondary guys over to handle that? And if so, we've got 1 back here and we've got support issues, or are we going to keep somebody backside? So take a look at what they do. And the power run game is a big part of this. They're going to block down, pull, kick out, and get up inside. And here you see there's no support. The support gets there late. That's a 12-yard gain. Now, same type of situation. Now you've got 3 receivers over here. And now you've got a linebacker. They're keeping somebody backside, so now you can be able to run the ball over here. And here's an unbalanced set. And again, how does Penn State play this unbalanced set? Do they keep the linebacker in, or they walk him out? The minute you walk him out, they're going to run the ball, power run game inside. So take a look here. And again, getting lined up is going to be key. One of the things we're not talking about, but you'll see Saturday, is a lot of motions, a lot of shifts and things like that. Play action pass game. Again, last week, Penn State's linebackers appeared to have trouble picking up things in the pass game, getting deep enough to take away the in routes and the crossing routes. Here, Pitt's going to come in there. They're going to show you a hard run fake. You're going to see linebackers and safeties. Penn State puts 8 guys around the ball to handle the run game. And now you've got one-on-one outside. Take a look at how Pitt does that with here. You see that run fake. You see all 3 of those guys stepping up, and now one-on-one outside. Pitt's going to have to match up. Penn State's going to have to match up with those guys. And then last but not least, the dreaded shovel series that has been a problem for Penn State against Pitt the last 2 years. Again, what they're going to do now, and the difference this year is with Pickett, they've got a much more mobile quarterback than they did last year. Again, they're going to come here, they're going to read him. If he comes out wide, they're going to shovel it here. If he stays in, they'll hand it off. So take a look at how that works. Again, a couple of touchdowns 2 years ago on this series. And again, there's a nice easy pitch inside. And the great thing for your quarterback is that counts as a 30-yard completion, even though you only threw the ball 2 yards. So well, expect those kind of things.
Another great, interesting matchup between these two. And we mentioned before, look for just about anything from Pitt, because this is a game that they want to win at home. They got to win it, in fact. So, all right, coming up on the Blue White Tailgate, more on what this game means to the Panthers. We'll have more after this.
And we welcome everyone back, and Shop Talk is presented by our good friends at Ace Hardware in State College, and part of our Shop Talk presented by Ace of State College is to talk to my old friend, good friend, Paul Alexander in Pittsburgh. Paul, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Steve, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Let's talk about atmosphere within the city. We saw what it was like 2 years ago, and it was a noon game. What's the atmosphere like this time around?
It'll be similar to the fall of Saigon, if you're familiar. It's going to be somewhat on the insane level. Unfortunately, the Pirates, now they were kind enough to move their game up in the day, but they're going to try and limit tailgating from 5 o'clock and after for the Penn State fans. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how you prevent people from tailgating. I don't know how you prevent people from, parking before 5 o'clock. It's going to be a friends and family crew at the Pirate Marlins game, I'm afraid. But I just don't know how you enforce that. It's going to be interesting. But once they get to 8 o'clock, we do know that both Pitt and Penn State fans have the ability to overcome. They will tailgate. They will pregame. They will be prepared. They will be unbelievably intense. For all intents and purposes, this is the last time for Pitt fans to see Penn State, maybe in Pittsburgh, maybe ever, which is so sad to me, but probably a reality. And the fact that, Pitt was relatively impressive, even though they scored all their 33 points against Greg Gattuso and Albany in the first half, I think they're licking their chops after they saw what Penn State had to do to beat Appalachian State.
Tell me a little bit about the quarterback, Kenny Pickett. He came on at the end of last year. He had the big win over Miami. What do you like about Kenny Pickett?
It's just that dual-threat quarterback. First of all, he's comfortable and confident. I think Pitt could have won 2 or 3 more games last year had they inserted him a bit sooner.
Yeah.
But there's this guy, what was his name? I think it was a Paterno. A little better too late than too early.
Yeah.
So the fact that he didn't maybe get his confidence shattered, or who knows what could have happened in that instance. But he has made this his team, and as a sophomore, he is extremely comfortable in the leadership role, and he'll hang in the pocket and make a throw. He'll tuck it and go. I would imagine, after what Penn State went through defensively last week, you're going to want to have a shadow on this kid because, when you don't account for him, he'll hurt you.
Quinn Ware-Guinness missed all of last season, the middle linebacker. What does he mean to what Pat wants to do defensively?
Well, you know what I love about, going back to his Michigan State days and Coach Narduzzi, this is not a read and react concept. This is let's go attack.
Yep.
And if you make a mistake, make it at 100 miles an hour. And I love that concept. I don't know if you remember the name Rod Rust. When he came
of course I do.
And coached the Steel. Remember that disaster?
Yep.
And that was the first time I think I heard a defensive coach talk about reading and reacting, basically just waiting for the offense to commit so you could go ahead and then decide how you're going to attack it.
Right.
No, that is a complete disaster. So what I think is going to happen, Pitt's going to be in complete attack mode. I mean, I really believe that they feel this is their best defense they've had under Pat Narduzzi. So considering how I think shaky at times Penn State's offensive line was, that's going to be a key matchup on Saturday.
What do you think of Trace McSorley?
Love him. He's John Schaefer with a little more flash. Just doesn't lose. Finds a way to win. Ultimate competitor. Has just enough of everything, just enough, mobility, just enough arm strength. But what he has in heart, desire, leadership, all the intangibles, he is so overloaded in those areas that I just love him. I love everything about him. He is a pure leader, general, whatever you want to call him. I absolutely love Trace McSorley.
Well, Paul, I'm looking forward to seeing you when we get down there, including the 12 minutes we're allowed to tailgate.
Yeah, well, I think, we should maybe have a soda and maybe a hot dog and call it a tailgate.
Yeah, I think that works. I think we're allowed to tailgate, I think, from 6:06 to about 6:18. Then you get to go into the game. But, hey, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you. Should be a lot of fun with the game coming up on Saturday night.
It's been my long-standing favorite rivalry. I wish it would be what it was. We know it can't be, but the memories I have from 48-14 to all the other things, Steve, Pitt-Penn State is what college football should be all about.
Paul, always a pleasure. Coming up, we will take a look at Pitt. We'll hear from Pat Narduzzi in a moment as we continue with the Blue-White Tailgate after this. All right, so Pitt coming off their 33-7 win over Albany, so now they've at least gone up against somebody. They've got some tape, but for them, Appalachian State, it was their Super Bowl. For Pitt, this is their Super Bowl.
Well, no question about it. I mean, it's fun to play a team that hates you as much as Pitt does, that is focused on you, and that's a good thing, and I think that's healthy, and it's a good challenge in week 2.
You mentioned the tape. I'm not so sure Pitt put much on tape.
They did not.
Right, for Penn State to look at. They didn't need to, and they scheduled Albany. They took care of Albany, and they kept all their secrets and all their stuff to themselves that they're going to roll out for Saturday night's game against Penn State. And look, let's face it, 6-6, but a win over the Nittany Lions, and no one in the Panthers fan base is saying a word. And for Narduzzi, 8-5, 5-7, trending in the wrong direction. He's got his guys now, that he's brought in. I don't know what to expect of this team, but no one really cares after this week. They only care about this week.
So let's take a look at the Pat Narduzzi file. And, he did a fabulous job at Michigan State as a defensive coordinator. His part really got Michigan State going there. Now at Pitt, look, you're trying to get something started here. I mean, in all fairness, he's in his 4th year here?
Yep.
Yeah. As Todd mentioned, he finally has his guys in there, and Jay, that makes a difference.
Well, I think the biggest difference last year, if you look at how they played Penn State last year, they got down 14 points,
Yep.
They settled down, they ran the ball, they controlled the clock, but they didn't have a quarterback to make the kind of plays they needed to be able to beat Penn State. They have that guy now, and that's Pat's guy. And I thought I remember watching that Miami game last year, and when Pickett took the 4th and 5 and ran for a 25-yard touchdown, I went, oh, dang. he's back for a few years.
Yeah, he's a playmaker, and look, they always find a way, right, to make a splash nationally. They knocked off Clemson same year that they beat Penn State, and Clemson won the national championship, and that was somewhat late in the year. So somehow, some way, they seem to put it together for a couple of games. We'll have to see if they do it for Saturday. And they got 9 guys back on defense, and that's where Narduzzi puts all his emphasis. And he's got his guys, they know the system, and so 9 starters return.
Kenny Pickett's made a difference for Pitt. There's no question about that. I mean, is he a great quarterback? No, he's not a great quarterback. He's a good college quarterback who beat a good Miami team last year. Miami was not a great team last year. They're a good team. Right. I mean, you look at their stats, they're all like down, except for turnovers. All right? The turnover thing was up and above. But Lamont Wade is very wary of what Kenny Pickett brings to the table.
He's real elusive. He's more elusive than the usual Pitt quarterback that they had, and he can really run. He has a strong arm, and he's a young guy getting out there. So we're just gonna keep on watching film on him, keep on evaluating his strengths and his weaknesses. But he's a real good player.
And they've got some tailbacks too. I mean, same guys Penn State saw last year, Ollison and Hall, and they both are good players.
Well, they ran the ball effectively against Penn State last year at times, and that the shovel, the whole series that they have is very tough to defend, and those guys are tough to tackle. And if we don't tackle better than we did last week, it's going to be a long day.
Well, and they pride themselves in trying to beat you in several different ways. And they tried to control the clock last year, and they can come with a power running game. They can also attack your edges. So you got to be prepared for everything. And as we mentioned before, the line of scrimmage is going to be really important. I mean, you want to really control the middle, clog it up a little bit, and that way you can get some speed on the edges and keep them from big gains.
And Taysir Mack, who transferred from Indiana, they thought he would have to sit out the year as a transfer, but he was allowed to start playing in August. Okay, that's big. Trey Tipton's back. That helps them as well. Now you go to the defense. And for James Franklin, a lot starts with the length at defensive end.
I think these defensive ends are long and athletic and are disruptive and make plays. I think we got some guys in practice that we go against that are probably similar, but it's going to be a challenge. I think they do some things with their 3 down front on 3rd and 6 or more that create some challenges as well.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Plus, I think getting Quentin Ward-Guinness back at middle linebacker is helping. You know, like lining a team up properly. He missed all of last year, Jay.
Well, I was watching the TV game of the Albany Pitt game, and one of the things Narduzzi told the announcers is that he was one of the best middle linebackers he's ever coached. And for a guy like Pat Narduzzi to say that, that's saying something.
Yeah, he doesn't just throw out those kind of compliments. And, Coach Franklin mentioned the 3rd and 6s. Those are the situations you want to avoid, right? I mean, Penn State showed some prowess in the power running game themselves last week, running straight ahead. And so if they can get Miles Sanders on track, Ricky Slade, bam, up the middle, hit it hard, 5-6 yards to get them in good down and distance situations, Penn State starts to control the clock a little bit. We're not sure if this is going to be as explosive of a team as last year or the year before. Offensively, they're still going to find their identity. They're still going to put up some points. So I'm interested to see how Penn State attacks Pitt's defense as well.
And part of the identity of Pat Narduzzi over the years is he loves to blitz, which means pressure is on your corners. And can their corners hold up? Well, you play Albany, and Dane Jackson, you're guessing they held him out, right? I mean, that's one of the keys to this game. How do the corners hold up against Penn State's wideouts?
Well, Juwan Johnson is going to be a key out there with the height. And if he does not, if he's not able to get loose, they're really going to be dependent upon, and as we talked in film, the inside guys, slot guys, and the tight end guys. And the tight end guys were really, in the past game last week for Penn State, not a big factor. And they're going to have to be this week.
And look, Juwan Johnson creates that mismatch. What I'm interested to see is who is the deep guy? Who is the one-on-one guy? Yeah. We've seen that many, many times the last couple of years as the jump balls, the one-on-ones. And if they're going to blitz and leave their corners on an island, McSorley's going to, Trace is going to need to throw that up and have some confidence that Penn State's receiver is going to bring it down.
There's also going to be some moments in this game where Trace McSorley has to feel the freedom to run. And because James Franklin does. He's like, doesn't have to run it 15 times, but when it's open. All right, coming up. The good, the bad, the ugly, and picks after this. Interesting when I travel around the state, if I go anywhere west of Altoona, this game means everything to them. I go east of Altoona, it's not even brought up. I mean, it's not even brought up. I mean, I go to Harrisburg, I go to York, is it brought up much to you in York?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot.
If they were playing Notre Dame, would it be brought up?
Right. In that vein. And I think the 4-year series, that's, hey, this is going to be nice. We'll get to see it, enjoy it for 4 years. And then, who else is on the schedule? Right. I think for this game really to truly matter more and more, it has to be there every year.
Yes.
And if it's not there every year, you'll enjoy it occasionally.
Would you like it to continue?
I would. I would like to see it continue. Yeah. But I think the only way that happens is if they go back to an 8-game conference schedule. And that's not happening. It's just not happening. They just released the schedule again for the years ahead. So, and they just scheduled Temple, Villanova. Yeah. So it's
and
just,
the Blue Hens, Delaware. Don't forget the Blue Hens.
So, look, enjoy these 2 years because it's not going to be seen for a while.
I know you want it to continue.
Oh, look, if the Big Ten had 8 conference games, and that's going to be, that's going to be a fight all along. Then you can play Pitt every year, and then also be able to play another non-conference Power 5 team.
But if they stay at 9, which they are, you can't play Pitt every year. I mean, you got to have the Auburns and the West Virginias.
You can't be Iowa and be stuck playing Iowa State every year. You can't do that.
Right.
Okay, so now we get to the good, the bad, and the ugly. And my good is Todd didn't even know about it until I told him before the show. When Appalachian State huddled up for about 60 to 90 seconds at midfield, Scott Satterfield talked to his team, and then they broke up to go to the locker room. Fans at Beaver Stadium gave them a standing ovation. Class.
Yeah, very cool. Well deserved, too. They played really, really well. Okay, the bad. How about traditional powers in Florida? Miami of Florida, crushed by LSU. Florida State, I'm not so sure they showed up in their home field against Virginia Tech. Did not look good in Willie Taggart's debut.
Well, I'm going to go with ugly, and that's 9 Big Ten conference games, 9 Big 12 conference games, 9 Pac-12 conference games. You're really locking your teams into such regional schedules where you don't see a lot of variety. And with attendance down, with ratings down, I think that would add some spice if all of a sudden Penn State's playing Pitt every year and a team like Clemson or somebody like that, or an Auburn. I think that would be good.
All right, so let's get to picks now. Josh, you have Oklahoma, UCLA.
Casimir Allen impressed in UCLA's opener against Cincinnati, but the Oklahoma Sooners put on a clinic against FAU. I just don't see Chip Kelly and the Bruins coming into Norman and leaving with a win. I'm picking Oklahoma.
All right, so let's get to the SEC. Georgia, South Carolina, Todd.
I think my reputation as a bad picker on this show precedes me because they gave me a layup. I'll take Georgia over the Gamecocks.
All right, Clemson, Texas A&M. Now, this is a heck of a non-conference game.
This is a heck of a non-conference game. We just talked about, Clemson's got 8 conference games. They play South Carolina every year in-state, and they can go play Texas A&M. But I think Clemson has way too much for A&M.
USC is Stanford is mine. Daniels at quarterback, Bryce Love at tailback. Stanford looked rather pedestrian in its opener, but at home I'll take Stanford to win the game. Still don't think USC has enough yet. Jay, keys to the game brought to you by our good friends at Aaron's. I've teed you up. Drive it down the fairway.
Well, I think the big thing for Penn State, like last year, if they can get up early, because Pitt is a team that's not designed to score 45, 50 points. They're a team that's designed to chew the clock, not turn the ball over, and play ahead.
Guys, they got to be stingier with their own end zone. They gave up 4 touchdowns. I don't mind giving up yards, right, and some points here and there, but you cannot give up so many touchdowns. And there was not a lot of resistance to keep them out of the end zone. They've got to do that against Pitt. Same formula as last year. You give up a few drives, 10 plays, whatever. Keep them to field goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's big in this. You have to control the Pitt running game. I mean, you have to put Pickett, and I like Kenny Pickett as a quarterback, but you've got to put him in a position to win the game. And then conversely, Penn State has to run the ball. And I agree with Jay. You've got to play with the lead. In that environment, you have to play with the lead. Don't get them excited about anything because they're already going to be mad enough about the parking situation. Okay?
Let's go Pirates.
You get the tailgate for 12 minutes. Enjoy the game. Hey, thanks for joining us. Appreciate everything. We'll talk to you next week on the Blue White Tailgate Show.